In the distant future, the city moved to a new rhythm. Neon signs cast a sickly glow over forgotten alleys, delivery drones hummed in the sky, and the air always smelled of rain mixed with burnt ozone. But there were streets the city had erased from its maps, places even the cops wouldn't go. One of them was District 17, a neighborhood where the buildings leaned into each other like tired old men, sagging and crumbling. People said the district was cursed, but that wasn't quite right. It was hungry. And that's where Don, a paramedic, found himself on a soaking wet Tuesday night. Frantic neighbors had called about screams coming from an apartment. When he got there, the door was slightly open, the hallway swallowed by shadows that felt thicker and colder than just darkness. Inside, a young woman, her body convulsing in violent, unnatural jerks. Her eyes were rolled back, her mouth moving but making no sound. Don knelt beside her and whispered, "Ma'am?" She opened her mouth and a voice came out, but it wasn't hers. It was a low, guttural growl, dripping with pure malice, speaking a language he couldn't understand. And then she laughed. It wasn't a human sound. It was a noise that seemed to crawl up the walls and spread across the ceiling, filling the small apartment like a toxic smoke. Don reached out to grab her, but the moment his fingers touched her arm, an icy coldness shot through him. His vision blurred, and the room seemed to shift and warp around him. The shadows in the corners stretched into impossible shapes. Limbs twisted at wrong angles, faces with silent, screaming mouths pressed into the walls. Then the lights went out. When they flickered back on a second later, the woman was gone. In her place, a smear of blackened skin was crawling across the floor tiles, moving as if it had a life of its own. Don stumbled back, his heart pounding against his ribs. The black smear slowly formed a single word on the floor: "Stay." Over the next 3 nights, the calls kept coming in. Same story, different addresses. Neighbors reporting terrifying screams, shadows moving in the corners of their vision, and people simply vanishing from inside their locked homes. Don started seeing a pattern. Every victim had one thing in common. Their apartment windows were always left open when the attack happened, and every single one of those windows looked out onto District 17. Driven by a mix of fear and duty, he went back to the first apartment, alone. The air inside felt heavier this time, pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. He found traces of a black, sticky residue splattered along the walls, like burnt ink. The residue formed shapes, almost human, but horribly wrong, like a body stitched together from several different corpses. And then he saw it, a reflection in a shattered mirror. A figure was standing right behind him. It wasn't fully there, just a flicker, a distortion in the air, a shadow with substance. Without moving its lips, it spoke, the voice echoing in his head. "You should have left." Don ran, but when he burst out onto the street, it had changed. The buildings leaned in closer, the shadows pooled in the streetlights deeper and thicker than before. A whisper followed him, low and insistent, slithering into his ears. "They will take you too." Days later, Don was found wandering the city, dazed and incoherent, murmuring nonsense in a language no one recognized. The edges of his eyes had turned black, with dark veins spreading like ink under his skin. He never spoke a coherent word again. His apartment was found completely empty, except for one thing. The front door was standing wide open, and a faint smell of burnt incense and wet earth hung in the air. The urban legend of District 17 spread quietly after that. A hushed warning passed between paramedics, cops, and late-night delivery drivers. Some places in the city are alive, they'd say, and they don't feed on hunger or blood. They feed on something older, something that waits for those who wander too close to the corners of the world that are already dead. On rainy nights, if you walk past District 17, you can feel it watching you. A pressure in your chest, a whisper at the very edge of your hearing. Not a voice, not a name, just something ancient and hungry, waiting for you to make one simple mistake. To look too long. To open a window. Because once it sees you, it begins its work, and there is no turning back.